37% of Americans cannot cover a surprise $400 bill with cash, not $40,400. The Federal Reserve asked this question in October of last year, and the answer has not moved in 3 years. 1 in 3 adults, a flat tire, a copay, a broken water heater, and roughly a third of the country reaches for a credit card, a family member, or something worse. If you've been doing everything right, contributing to your 401k, watching your balance climb, feeling like the system is finally working for you, this is not a story about people who are bad with money. This is a story about a structural gap the financial industry almost never names directly. If you are in your 30s or 40s, putting money away every month and still feel one unexpected bill away from a real problem, this is not a discipline failure. It is a liquidity problem, and there's a specific reason most financially responsible people end up here that has nothing to do with liabilities. And the math behind it is uglier than the headline number suggests. I am RJ. This is the Compound Classroom. Let us run the numbers. Most people build their financial picture around one scorecard: the retirement account balance. You log in, you see the number climbing, and you feel like you are on track. That feeling is real. The progress is real. But there is a second number the scorecard never shows you, and that is the number that determines whether a $400 bill derails your month or disappears into background noise. That second number is your liquid buffer, cash you can touch today, not in 3 business days, not after a penalty, today. Here is what I call the liquidity gap. It is the distance between what you have saved and what you can actually spend without a cost attached. Most savers have a wide liquidity gap, and they do not know it because the system rewards one behavior: contribute more, invest early, maximize the match, while quietly leaving the other bucket empty. Think of it this way: imagine 2 containers. The first container is large, growing, and locked behind a door with a combination lock. That is your 401k. The second container is small, accessible, and sitting right there on the counter. That is your liquid cash. The financial advice industry has spent decades telling you to fill the first container as fast as possible. Almost no one tells you that if the second container is empty, the first one becomes a liability. If you want more breakdowns like this, financial mechanics the system does not explain, subscribe to the Compound Classroom. That is what we do here. This is not a fringe problem. There are data from the 2025 survey of household economics shows that 37% of adults would not cover a $400 emergency exclusively with cash or its equivalent. Among women, that number climbs to 58%. Among Black households, it reaches 72%. These are not people who are failing to save. Many of them have retirement accounts. They simply do not have liquid access to a small amount of cash when something goes wrong. If you want to understand how that happens to people doing everything right, you need to understand what I call the locked drawer. Your 401k is not a savings account. It is a locked drawer. The money is yours on paper, in the same way a house is yours even though the bank holds a lien. But if you need to open that drawer before age 59 and a half, you pay to get in. 10% penalty to the IRS plus ordinary income tax at whatever you pull out. At a 22% federal bracket, you lose 32 cents of every dollar before you see it, more if you count state taxes. Let us put a number on that. Andre is 34 years old. He has $45,000 in his 401k. A transmission goes out. The bill is $1,000. He does not have liquid cash. He thinks, I have $45,000 in my account. I will just pull $1,000. Here's what actually happens. The drawer costs him to open. He pulls $1,000. After the 10% penalty and federal tax, he walks away with roughly $680. He paid $320 to access his own money. But the real damage is not the penalty. The real damage is what that $1,000 was going to become. At 7% annual growth, $1,000 left in a 401k at age 34 becomes approximately $7,600 by age 65. He paid $320 in fees and gave up $7,600 in future retirement wealth. To cover a car repair, that is the actual cost of an empty second container. There is a second layer to the locked drawer that most people discover at the worst possible time. When you make a hardship withdrawal from a 401k, the money cannot be paid back. It is gone from the account permanently. A 401k loan is different. You borrow and repay yourself with interest, but a hardship withdrawal is a one-way door. You lose the principal, the future compound growth on that principal, and you pay the penalty on top. The IRS does not let you undo it. You cannot reverse the decision when things stabilize. The drawer opens, the money leaves, and the opportunity cost compounds for the next 30 years. That permanence is why the math feels so different from other financial mistakes. Miss a credit card payment and you pay a fee and move on. Make a hardship withdrawal at 34 and you are still paying for it at 64. Not in cash. In the retirement account balance you never quite reach. The $1,900 median hardship withdrawal Vanguard tracked in 2025 sounds like a small number. Left in a 401k at age 35 for 30 years at 7%, it would have become nearly $14,000. Most people pulling that money out are not thinking about $14,000 at 65, they are thinking about the bill on the counter today. I want to address the objection that is already forming. You might be thinking, okay, but this is the worst case. Most people would just put the $400 on a credit card and pay it off next month. That is a reasonable response. And if you can actually pay it off in full next month, fine. But here is the data point that makes that assumption shaky. Vanguard tracks nearly 5 million 401k participants. In 2025, 6% of those participants made hardship withdrawals from the retirement accounts. That is up from 3.6% in 2023 and roughly 2% before the pandemic. It is nearly triple. These are people with retirement savings. They have a locked drawer and they are opening it anyway because there is nothing else. People are not rating their 401k because they are irresponsible. They are doing it because the only liquid alternative was a credit card that was already stretched, or a family member who could not help, or nothing. Vanguard's own research found something that should make you stop and reread it. Participants who had $2,000 in liquid emergency savings contributed more to their 401k and took fewer withdrawals than participants without that buffer. The emergency fund did not compete with retirement savings, it protected them. $2,000 of liquid cash made people better 401k investors. Not worse, the locked drawer works best when the second container has something in it. Let me put this on a verbal graph. Picture two lines starting at the same point at age 30. The first line belongs to someone who maxes out their 401k contribution from day one and keeps nothing liquid. The line climbs steeply. Impressive. But at age 33, an unexpected expense hits. They reach into the drawer, the line dips. At 36, another hit, another dip. Each withdrawal carries its tax penalty and its compound loss. The line recovers but never quite catches what it would have been. The second line belongs to someone who contributed slightly less to the 401k in the early years and instead built a 2-month liquid buffer first. The line climbs more slowly at the start, but it never dips, no withdrawals. No penalties, no compound losses. By age 50, the second line is higher than the first. Not because the second person saved more, because they never had to unsave. Here is the strongest case for the other side because I want to be fair to it. The employer matches real money. If your employer matches 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary, that is a guaranteed 50% return on that portion of your investment. Nothing in the savings account comes close. Walking away from that match to build the cash buffer first has a real cost. That is a legitimate argument. The match is not something to dismiss. But here is the conditional truth. The match only works if the money stays in the account. If a bad month forces you to make a hardship withdrawal, you do not just give back the match returns. You pay a penalty on top of losing them. The math on the match assumes the drawer stays locked. There appears nothing liquid when the car breaks down. The drawer is going to get opened. That is not a hypothetical. That is what the Vanguard data shows is actually happening at a rate that has tripled in 2 years. The protocol here is not about choosing between retirement savings and an emergency fund. It is about sequencing them correctly so both survive. If you want to stop losing ground every time life happens, here is how to actually run the numbers and build the right order. Step 1 is calculating your survival number. This is not your monthly budget. This is the stripped down, lights on, rent paid, food in the fridge number. What does it cost to exist for 1 month if nothing is optional except the essentials? No subscriptions, no dining out, no extras, just survival. For most people in their 30s, this lands somewhere between $1,500 and $3,500 depending on where they live. Write that number down. That is your target for the first container, the liquid one. Step 2 is the sequencing rule. Contribute to your 401k up to the full employer match. Not a dollar less, the match is free money and you do not leave free money on the table. But once you have captured the match, redirect the next dollars to your liquid buffer until you hit 1 month of your survival number. 1 month. Not 6, 1. Put it in a high yield savings account, not a checking account. The national average on a checking account right now is about 0.01%. A competitive high yield savings account is paying 4% or better. On $5,000, that is the difference between 50 cents a year and $200 a year. Same liquidity, same FDIC protection. $200 more for doing nothing except clicking open a different account. Vanguard's data on this is worth pausing on. Among salaried workers, people with predictable paychecks, 71% had access to liquid emergency savings. Among hourly workers, people with irregular income, the ones most likely to hit an unexpected expense right before a slow week, only 39% did. And those hourly workers cash out their 401k when they leave a job at a rate 10 to 15 percentage points higher than salaried workers with similar annual incomes. The predictability of the paycheck is not the only difference. The buffer is the difference. When the buffer does not exist, the locked drawer gets open. Every time. Once the 1 month buffer exists, go back to the 401k. Increased contributions build toward 3 months over the following year. The goal is to have a liquid layer sitting between you and the locked drawer so the drawer never has to open for the wrong reason. Step 3 is automation. The buffer does not build through willpower. It builds through architecture. Set up an automatic transfer from your paycheck or checking account to the high yield savings account. Make it happen the day after your paycheck lands. Not when you remember. Not when there is money left over. First, $100 a month into the account takes 15 months to build a $1,500 buffer. That is 1 year and 3 months. You will not notice the $100 leaving. You will notice the first time a $400 bill lands and you do not reach for a credit card. The goal of all of this is not to have a bigger number in the savings account. The goal is to eliminate the forced decision. Right now, a $400 bill is a decision. It lands and you have to figure out where it comes from. You negotiate with yourself, you delay something else, you feel the friction. When the liquid buffer exists, a $400 bill is not a decision, it is an errand. You pay it, you refill the buffer over the next 2 months, and you move on. That is the difference between financial stress and financial margin. Not $1 million in retirement. A few months of accessible cash that turns emergencies into inconveniences. The liquidity gap is not a character flaw, it is a design gap. The financial industry is very good at routing money into the locked drawer. Automatic enrollment, automatic escalation, employer match incentives, all of it flows toward the 401k. Almost none of it flows toward the second container. That is not an accident. Retirement assets generate fee revenue. Liquid savings accounts at online banks do not. The system is not trying to help you cover a flat tire. It is trying to grow assets it can manage. Understanding that is not a reason to distrust the 401k. The 401k is still one of the best tools available for building long-term wealth. But you are the one who decides the sequencing. You are the one who makes sure both containers exist before the next unexpected bill arrives. The $400 is not the number that matters. The number that matters is how many nights you sleep without running the calculation in your head. That is what a liquid buffer actually buys. Not safety from catastrophe. Safety from the low-grade math that runs in the background of every month where the buffer is empty. Drop your survival number in the comments. Not your income, not your net worth. Just the bare minimum monthly cost to keep your life running. I want to see where people are landing. And if you are in your 30s or 40s trying to build real financial margin, not just a retirement balance, hit subscribe. One of these every week on the Compound Classroom. I will see you in the next one.